I have a bunch of different mallets, shapes and sizes, but one that I really like is that hammer there, and it has a crack in its handle. And it also has a oval shaped handle, and so I thought what I would do is measure it up, take the measurements so that I could reproduce it, and learn how to do offset turning in order to get an oval shape in the handle. So I've measured the widest point of the handle, and I'm ripping a couple of pieces of hickory. I'm going to laminate these two pieces together in order to make my blank for the handle. The blank is going to have a seam because of the two glued pieces. The hammer head I'm building is also laminated hickory, and it will have a seam, and I'm going to hope to line up the seam in this handle with the seam in the hickory head for no other reason than I think it'll look cooler. And in some ways it's going to help me in shaping this handle in the oval shape, the offset shape. It's also going to help me later on to center the drilling hole in the hammerhead. So here are the three centers for centering the lathe to do an offset turning, and the centers that are off center by 3/16 because the total space between the two centers is 3/8, which is the difference between the widest part of the handle and the narrowest part of the handle. Let me explain it better with a drawing. You can see these centers are spaced 3/16 of an inch apart. So if I turn using that lower center, that part that I just erased is just a miss, right? Because I'm off center. And this yellow part will be the part of the wood that I will remove with my lathe chisel. That'll be that yellow part there. That's when I use the bottom hole for my lathe center. Now when I move to the top hole and do a similar cut, the area up above there is where the chisel will miss the handle, and the yellow part will be where the chisel removes the wood. And so once that wood is removed, your handle ends up being sort of a football shape. Then you center it back to the center of the handle and take the lathe and then just barely nip off those two pointed ends. And again, the gray part on the top, the gray part on the bottom are misses. Your chisel isn't reaching that far, but the yellow part on the left and right, your chisel is going to remove. And you'll see as I erase those, you're left with a pretty nice oval shape. Now that, the little tiny irregularities in that you can kind of see where that last cut intersected the previous cut are easily taken out by just sandpaper once you're spinning the handle. In fact, even by sandpaper running laterally down the handle rather than around the handle on the lathe. So there you are, you end up with a nice oval shape by offsetting those two centers. And then this is how the handle will spin once you're back to the center. Again, you can use sandpaper then to even out the little imperfections, and you end up with a very nice oval. Here's just another take at it that kind of shows it to you more in 3 dimensions, and I think maybe it even helps further. So let's just say this is my piece of wood. I've turned it down to where it's round. I've spaced those 3 centers, 3/16 of an inch. If it's on the center of my lathe, it's just spinning like I just spinned it. If I spin it off center, it looks like that. You can see I'll be taking off wood at the part that sticks out, and I'll be missing the wood on the other part. Put it on the other center, and it'll happen in the opposite way. So let's just pretend now that I'm going to take this piece, I'm going to cut it down into a cylinder that is just a little bit bigger than the largest dimension of the widest part of the handle. So this is just make believe. I've just taken it down now to about 1 5/8 inches in diameter. Now I mount the lathe on that lower hole, and you can see it turns in an offset way. And if I were to put that in the lathe and chisel it, I'd remove that part that I just removed there with SketchUp. That part is the part that misses, and you're seeing now that I've got kind of half of that football shape. I move to that upper center, remove that part of the wood, remove that part that missed. I'm now down to that football shape. I put it back on the center, and then I just barely nick those two pointed parts of the football and remove those. Again, the white parts that are showing there where the chisel misses. And look, I've got a very nice oval-shaped handle. Now, once you've done the contours of that handle, your hand, as you're guiding your tool along, will follow the contour, and you'll end up with a really nice oval-shaped handle. So here is my blank. You saw that I'd glued it up a minute ago. I had about a 2-inch square blank, and so I'm turning it down now just into a cylinder. I'm getting it close. It's going to be about 1 5/8 inches in diameter. I had also taken the measurements of my handle, the handle I want to duplicate, and again, I'm not trying to exactly duplicate it, but I'd taken those measurements of that handle, and I'm transferring those wide spots and narrow spots to the cylinder using my parting tool. So I'll know what I'm going to cut down to. That's the bottom end of the handle that I'm shaping right there. It kind of necks in a little bit where your hand goes. It gets a little bit narrower there. And then it gets wide again at that center mark I just made. And then it kind of flares when it gets towards the hammer head. And then it'll be turned into a 7/8 cylinder that I'll slide into the hammer head after I drill that out with a Forstner bit. So I'm just getting all my highs and lows, so to speak, in this handle turned now using the parting tool, finding those dimensions, and then I will, with my chisel, or my gouge, excuse me, cut down to those different dimensions to get the basic outline of the handle. Again, the highs, the lows, the wide spots, and the narrow spots. So I'm speeding this up in order to get those done quickly. And so I just continue to turn this down, again, getting basically the outline. If you were to look at the handle on its wide side, you'll get this sort of a shape. It narrows above the handle part. It flares out again when it gets close to the head, and you're kind of seeing the general shape. So once you have that shape done, now it's time to do the offset. So what I'll do here now is remove this from the lathe. A little bit more fine-tuning. I'll remove this from the lathe and move it now to one of those two offset centers. And once I get that on those centers, you're going to see as it starts to turn that it's turning in an oblong way. I'm making some lines on the seams where those pointed parts of the football, the way I described it earlier, are. I'm making some pencil lines there so I know when I've cut to that area. And you can see I'm just following the contour with my chisel. And you saw that it wasn't taking very much pressure at all. In fact, it just sort of glides along that shape, but amazingly so, you get the oblong shape very quickly because you're just nicking off a little bit of wood on each of those flatter sides. And there I am back on the centers again, taking just the points off of that football shape. And you saw how fast that happened. That's just about literally how fast it happened. I'm taking some sandpaper now, and it takes out the little imperfections, but I'm telling you, this thing almost felt immediately like a hammer handle in my hand, because that oblong shape is just a much more comfortable shape as a hammer handle. So now I'm just kind of checking it out for little imperfections, sanding along the edge. I'm cutting a little chamfer in the bottom of it. It kind of protects the handle so it's not a sharp edge for when you're bouncing it around a little bit. And now I will be starting on the left-hand side to where I will turn basically a 7/8 inch diameter dowel, a couple of inches long, that is going to fit into a 7/8 inch hole in the hammerhead. So here I'm just speedily removing the wood, getting it down to that 7/8 inch dowel shape at the upper end of the handle. So I'm just finishing up the bottom side, doing a little bit of sanding. I found honestly that to sand this now in this shape was almost better to sand basically left and right along its length rather than spinning it, because it's now an oblong shape and it doesn't spin well. And so I just found myself sanding laterally along its length, and I'll tell you, it smoothed out really fast. I used a little wood there to burnish it, and it was ready for finish. I put a little bit of shellac on it. I gave it a coat of that, sanded it up a little bit after that coat of shellac, burnished it again with another handful of wood. Just continued to sand little imperfections out of it. I'll tell you again, it took on the hammer shape very quickly and very well. Putting a second coat of shellac on it just to get a little bit of a build. Trying not to get any shellac on that section there, because that's going to end up having to be glued. In fact, I'm not yet at the full 7/8 diameter, so here I am getting that down perfect, using calipers to get that dimension, because my Forstner bit that I'm going to use on the hammer head is a 7/8 inch bit. Now I'm putting a little wax on it, again rubbing laterally rather than spinning it, because again it doesn't spin well because it's now an oblong shape rather than a round shape. So I just give that a little bit of a polish job, and there's the hammerhead just to show you what that's going to look like. And this is really the finished product. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but that's what it looks like. The hammer feels great in your hand, pretty much matches my other hammer, and I have a new hickory hammer. If you like this video, please subscribe. Thank you for watching. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.